Well, hi, I'm Ted Clouser, host of the Align It podcast, and today I have my special guest with me, Eric Chin. Eric is the innovative Chief Information Officer at Arcane Industries, where he spearheads the company's technological advancements and ensures seamless IT operations. With a Bachelor of Business Administration in Business Management from Harding University and an MBA in Leadership from Baker College, Eric brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to his role. Before joining Arcane Industries, Eric held key positions at West Rock Coffee, Southern Glazers, McLean, and Walmart, driving technological innovation and operational efficiency. He is passionate about mentoring young professionals and fostering a culture of continuous learning. When he's not immersed in technology, Eric enjoys exploring the great outdoors, reading the Bible, and spending quality time with his family. His commitment to excellence makes him a standout leader in the tech industry, and I am honored to have him here on the show today. Eric, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, Eric, I want to start out by just talking a little bit about what it's like in the day of a Chief Information Officer.
It's exciting for sure. There's nothing that's standard, or there's nothing that's normal. At least in my days, it's always something, as you can imagine. And what I've been doing in this role, I've done this role at a few companies. It's one of those positions where I have my task list done. I'm an early riser, so I get that done. And then, when normal people start working, that's when I just kind of, sit there and wait and see what happens, because something's going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you're going to have to go play with that. So.
Well, you're one of the most dynamic people I've ever met. Your stories amaze me. You've shared some things that I just think sometimes don't seem humanly possible. So tell me, how did you end up in technology?
Well, I cut my teeth in operations. I grew up in the logistics distribution, the Walmart days, and doing distribution and warehousing with a few companies, and I love doing that. And so I guess, I reflect on it now, being in those positions in operations and logistics, I always leveraged the IT aspect to make things better, processes better, people better, and it just kind of, I kept doing that, and eventually in my career, they were like, "Hey, we need you to be the IT guy to go install this in 13 states and do this project." And I was like, "Okay," and so then somehow I became a CIO. And interestingly enough, one of the jobs that I hired for CIO. I told the person, the CEO, I said, "Look, I'm not an IT guy." He said, "No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine." And so, I am dangerous enough at most things to be able to do this job in this position. But again, I grew up in operations and manufacturing, but IT has always been a part of it, and I've embraced it. So.
Well, and I think it's perfect then as we talk about the alignment of technology with operations. Let's talk about just some of the industrial things that you have personally seen technology help advance over your career.
Well, it's I've had opportunity to be at a few different companies, been in manufacturing, distribution, logistics. So the one that sticks out to me is the ability to use technology to better just people's lives in general, but use it to trace things, use it to transact better processes, reduction of workforce labor, but also to give consumers what they want. And it's been interesting and fun doing I like to call them the impossible projects.
Yes.
Like I love getting those types of projects and then immediately leveraging the technology that's out there. And it's always changing, so it's fun to do.
Tell me a little bit about AI and how you anticipate that potentially changing. We talked a little bit before the podcast about pros and cons of AI, and just tell me what Eric Chin thinks about it.
Well, I don't know that you want to know what I think about that.
Come on, let's.
I'm very resistant, and I still am. Okay. And so, being in my position, in my role, I'm always on the defensive, on the security mindset from protection of the assets and company. And so, I leverage AI to do certain things, to see where we have gaps in security, and to use it for productive things inside the house, so to speak. And I don't not use it, but I'm very hesitant with fully automating processes before we really, know how it's going to impact things. But I am a big fan of it when it comes to tasks that help processes and the people aspect of it. But I'm when AI became, a few years ago, and it was a big topic, I was like, I'm scared to death of this thing, just from a security aspect, because that's what I do, is I protect the house. So you have to be aware of that.
Well, let's shift gears just for a little bit. The people that are watching this podcast, I think many of them are in an IT space, which can be a thankless space, right? When things go wrong, we hear about it. But when things go right, maybe that's just assumed that's the way it should be. So can you tell me maybe a story or situation where you really felt fulfilled with something you accomplished in your career?
Well, in this position and the roles I've had, they're unfortunately thankless jobs. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But it's the one that sticks out to me is where, we did a bunch of work that cost a lot of money, and then it took a lot of time to do it to protect our systems, our servers, our backups, and a disaster recovery plan built and things like that. We had an incident where it could have been detrimental to the business and to the company as a whole, but we were able to overcome it quickly because of that hard work, long money, all of that stuff to do the backup plans and to do it right infrastructure-wise. And we were able to get the business back up in a matter of 48 hours, which, again, if we wouldn't have done all that hard work, it could have been really bad. So did anyone notice? Of course, but it's a huge deal to be able to have continuity of business in the infrastructure that you built and put a lot of time into. So, I always go to security and making sure that things are secure and you're able to do business. In operations and manufacturing, you can't be down for extended periods of time. So I'm always thinking about that.
What keeps you awake at night?
Name a topic. I'm kind of a freak of nature that
Okay.
worries.
All right.
I'm a worrywart.
Okay.
But, what keeps me up at night, again, back to security and AI, is there's always something that's going to happen, and you just have to be prepared. What's your reaction? What's your response? What's your process? Spoofing of accounts, things like that. What do you do, and who's going to do it? And so, I unfortunately, I'm always I've got my radar, spidey senses up for those kind of things. But it's usually things that we're exposed on, or we need to address, or we don't have a plan to recover from. Those are the kind of things that kind of keep me going.
What are some tips that you could give on aligning technology with business outcomes?
I could give a lot, but let me say.
No, I'd love it. Bring it. I want to hear more.
Well, so in the industry I'm in now, so it's manufacturing that I'm in now, and so again, continuity. You got to keep the plants rolling. We're 24/7, multiple locations. So, how from an IT perspective do you make that possible? You develop infrastructure, again, protect the house, make things secure, make sure the processes are in place when things happen. And I've had the privilege of being in the room at the executive level, management level, to where we can make the kind of decisions that impacts things down the road. And so building the baseline infrastructure with the security, the firewalls, the backup plans, the redundant ISPs, things like that, is what I've come into a new situation or a new job or new project. I always make sure that we have that base infrastructure down, so that in a manufacturing facility where you are on a cloud-based system, if number one ISP goes down, we have a redundant. Just basic things like that, building that infrastructure from an IT perspective that, not everyone's thinking about internet going down, right, or a contractor cutting the line outside of the building. So those are the kind of things that in the IT world that I try to build from ground up, and to make sure that, again, we can manufacture, that we can process, that we can move things. Because guess what? When there's a problem, where does everybody? It always kind of defaults to IT. Like IT has back to who I am. I'm tasked with a lot of things, not necessarily IT, but it's making sure that you're prepared for big incidents and small, and again, keeping things going. And so I've learned just to make sure that you have the right things in place so that you can continue business, and when things happen, that you have a backup plan to keep things going. Mm-hmm. So very, very vague and a high level, but there's a lot of moving pieces with, if things go down, if servers go down, if there's an event, what's the plan and how you keep those things going.
Let's shift gears for just a moment. You're a family man. How do you balance all of the responsibilities and pressures and hours with being able to also be in the moment at home?
I don't, and my wife and family hates it. I've done a better job recently.
Good.
I've always prioritized work. Unfortunately, I've done a lot of traveling, but it's I've learned, and I'm learning more every day. You have to balance it. You have to be able to turn it off. I'm not one of those that can turn it off, but I'm trying. But it's good to separate. Again, 24/7 IT never has a minute off, and you know that. And in this position, there's always something that's you're going to have to make time for it. So, but you do have to draw the line. You do have to have your me time, and you just have to turn it off. But back to your previous questions, make sure you have backup plans and the structure and the process is built to where you can do those kind of things.
What are you most excited about with technology in the future?
Just the automation, the things I like about this AI stuff coming up is you can more quickly identify where you can automate things. And when in my business that I'm in now, I'm thinking about button pushes on a keyboard and tracking lots and quality things through the manufacturing process. So when you have to touch a product multiple times and do multiple processes and things to it, I'm excited about automating a lot of those button pushes, so to speak. Training users is a lot of time and investment and money for training, but now you can do some of those things with technology and automate it, which everyone's all about. And so I'm excited about doing that to making our business more efficient.
No, we could talk for hours about the benefits of automation and efficiencies, but the thing I think that is interesting is that opens up more time, right? And so what do we do with the more time? Do we grow businesses? Do we focus back on our families? It's trying to strike that balance. And so I think it's a hot topic. I've spent a significant amount of time recently talking about AI and automation and the fact that it will have the potential to really buy back time. So I'm excited about those things. I do think that as an organization, we want to make sure it aligns. As a person, we want to make sure it aligns with our core values, and it's definitely a constant struggle. I mean, talk to me just about the demands of what a CIO has to go through. You've mentioned the 24/7, but just the different facets, and really talk about it from the alignment of again, the role in the C-suite.
So I guess how I'd respond to that is I'm learning over time that. And let's be honest, IT, who wants to give IT a bunch of money and go do something? When we, again, being in the room, it's difficult to justify going and buy a whole new stack of servers for backup and for redundancy. That may have, that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, if in this role, in this position, that you can convince whoever it is, the board, executive team, or those around you, that IT needs to be the sharp end of the sword. If you can do that, then you're going to be much better off versus being in a corner. We need to cut costs. Let's go to IT and sales and marketing and do that. So I've always been in those positions where it's just cut. And I mean, you have to do those things sometimes, but my point is if you can get, again, the sharp end of the sword where you can do the proactive things. You're turning laptops every 5 years instead of every 9 or 10 or whatever. Those kind of things will help long term. And I've learned that the more proactive you can be, getting all your CapEx projects up to date, not having 10-year-old CapEx projects hanging out there just waiting for stuff to break. You got to get out there and get it out in front of that. And it's common sense stuff. It's just like a machine. You got to do the PMs on it and keep it up to speed and up to date. So that's been my biggest learning and struggle over time is I can operate under a thin, be a reactive type asset to the company, but you can also be the sharp end and have good and proactive things happening that prevent some of these issues that come up, that gives IT the bad name and all these costs that come up, so you can prevent some of that.
Have you, in your career, found any good ways to measure that from a metrics perspective, or maybe just how do you make it objective instead of subjective?
I've tried to track cost per employee at several companies from an IT perspective. It's kind of fuzzy math at the end of the day, but I have come up with, just kind of a thumb in the air metric of, what it does cost. And the good news is that with technology, again, advancing and the better tools that we have out there, it's becoming less and less. But on the flip side of that, what board executives, whoever, don't really realize is the true cost of IT, all of the licenses. So you think about, and I'm getting in the weeds here, but like Adobe Acrobat, Microsoft, all these one-off applications, no one's been thinking about these. Well, I say no one, but it's not a thought from an IT perspective of all the application costs and things that are associated with the position. And so we typically, what I've seen and lived is, we look at a salary and comp and all that, but we don't consider the cost of, this employee wants 6 laptops for 6 remote homes, and extreme example, but
sure.
There's a cost to IT from an application and hardware perspective, and the security. So you have security products per employee, devices, how many devices are they going to have, mobile device management, all sorts of things, and costs go along with IT. And that's been my learning through the years is, there's cost to that. But again, on the good side of that, there's applications and things that you can do better now that kind of consolidate those and make them a little more economical.
No, I think one of the facts that's important to think about is if you take out cost of goods for most businesses, you usually have people, and technology ought to be the second largest expense. Again, cost of goods aside, everybody has that, but what are your thoughts on the accuracy of that?
100%. And what I've learned too is everybody likes saying that, but where you put your money is maybe a different thing. And yes, yes, we have to be the most technologically advanced, whatever. Well, that needs money, that needs, investment, and then more importantly, it needs buy-off from senior level executives and board members. We can't, can't just say you need to go do it. And I've been in situations where, the executive team has embraced it, and it's great. Yeah. It's great. And when you have that support and buy-in that, we can use technology in a good way to benefit everybody, it's a good thing.
I love the conversation, and I think about often when we coach our clients, we talk about the importance of the CIO role and the importance of technology, and the fact that I think there is some risk that comes with having technology report to the finance side of the house as opposed to the operations side of the house. So we talk about that, and I'm a CEO, so I am a lot of times thinking of the shiny stuff, and I'm thinking of technology as gadgets or maybe things that could ultimately push. But I, even in my seat, and everybody listening in that C-suite needs to remember the Adobe licenses, the things that aren't sexy, right? The Microsoft licenses, the things that help push those things forward. So I appreciate you talking about that. Anybody that is really thinking about technology needs to think of those things too.
Yeah, and I've reported, to your point, to those roles, to all of them in different situations. So here's what I've learned about that is, if IT reports to finance, guess what? You're going to focus on finance and go get, the cost per good sold down to the 12th decimal point and focus on that. When you report to operations, guess what you're going to do? You're going to make the operations process in-house better. I mean, good things, but you're not focused. And so when I've reported to the CEO a couple times now, so the beauty of that is your mind frame changes, your priorities and things change obviously, but you're looking out across the landscape instead of just down one or two paths, and it allows the business to become better over time. And I've lived through all those different kinds of structures, and you got to do what you got to do in those roles. But I think the most effective for any company is to have, whatever it's called, the CIO, CTO, whatever it is, the IT person needs to be in a position and report to someone that cares about the entire business, not just a function of the business, because IT is that important.
Yes. Well, and I think, Chief Brand Officer is sort of a new role that's come in the past decade. Certainly all the CIOs, CTOs, we talk about the fact that decisions need to be run through branding. I think decisions also need to be run through technology. So as you're making business decisions, we have to think about the security aspect of it. We have to think about what technology is involved. So I think it's important. Let's shift gears again for just a second. It's got to be a little bit lonely in the CIO world, the director of IT. So for anybody listening, what's some advice you have to meet like-minded people or to have conversations that are IT focused, that maybe the struggles that you face, that how do you find your peers, I guess?
Interesting question. So the beauty of it is they're everywhere. You can find, because IT touches everything. Sales, finance, operations, all. I mean, you're dealing with all the vendors, sales, ops. I mean, you're kind of the conduit or whatever you want to call it in between functions and processes within the business. So you always have to be involved. And so I guess what I would say is just if you're not involved, you need to be in the middle of everything. And that's another word of caution for, anybody starting their own company or whatever is, you have to make sure IT is involved, even if they're just listening in the room, because it enables that position. And I've literally done this where I've heard things that may be coming. And so what do I do with that? I prepare the business in a way technology wise with, just basic stuff, landlines and hardware, things like that. The more that IT is involved in those conversations in different groups and roles within a business, the better off the business is going to be. But how do you cope with? I mean, everyone's your friend. So that's what I've learned. Okay. And so you get to know a lot of people. So it's not like you're on an island by yourself. Now, those people are out there that don't like IT because they had a bad experience, but they'll get over it and they'll need you one day and they'll be your friend again.
Sure, absolutely.
But everybody's your friend, and you need to embrace it and don't silo yourself in the position and just be, you have to run to fires. You don't run from them. So run to them and be involved in everything and be welcomed, and it's good because you get to know everybody in the business.
But if you're running into fires, don't you get burnt sometimes?
Always. You live with the burns and you move on. So, but that's how you learn and how you prevent. And that's just, and not a lot of people in this position do that, and they just, do what they do. But the way I found most effective is when there's an issue, you better get involved right then when you find out, because guess what? When it starts burning, you're going to get called into it, and you don't want to be on the back end of that trying to save the house. So that's just my personal learnings.
Well, and you're definitely a roll up your sleeves and get dirty kind of guy, in the sense of you want to be in the midst of that together with your team. And I've seen that firsthand. What specifically would you advise someone who's young and thinking about this as a career path? What would you tell a younger Eric Chin?
That this is the only path. This is a cool role. I mean, again, I didn't go to college or school or anywhere in my early career thinking I was wanting to be an IT guy, because I just had my perceptions of what that meant and was. But now with like I'm not an IT guy, and I'm an IT guy. So with the way technology is now, I mean, anyone can learn. I mean, I've got little kids that are, I mean, oh my goodness, they're doing stuff that I couldn't do in my 30s. So I would say that this is a role. Again, you get to be involved in everything about the business. And so it's, go learn technology, get yourself involved. And if you want to be a salesperson, I mean, you know how sales works now because you're involved in it. Or in manufacturing, you know how the machines and the PLCs work on them. And so this is a career and a position where you can know more about the business than anyone in the business. That's what's been cool about this role is the CEO hears what a CEO hears, but being involved, again, rolling up your sleeves and getting into the machines and ops and the warehouse, all this stuff, you know what's going on and you know how to run the business. And even if you don't like that role, hey, you know all about each one of those and go do that. But it's an interesting role. Again, you're involved in everything. It's always changing. It's not the same. It's not like a sales pitch that you can always do this kind of sales pitch, but it's different. It's always changing. And if you're that kind of person that likes that kind of change and doesn't like the same thing every day, this is a cool deal.
So you're not bored very much?
Never.
In the industrial side of the house, have you looked at anything robotics, and even personally, professionally? Just tell me what your thoughts are on the robotics.
And I've dealt with it. And again, that's how I kind of got into this role. I loved it. I've worked for, big 5 companies where there were automation and things, and it really intrigued me, and it's awesome. I mean, you look at, this is dating myself, but like when auto palletizers first came out,
Yes.
and just looking at a pallet go on a thing, and it suctions it and it moves it, and then automatic labeling. I mean, these are cool things, and we're, you know, in the role I'm in now, we're doing that now. We're looking at all those automations things I spoke to before, leveraging that. Again, it's an investment.
Yes.
And so, you know, I've become very in tune with how to develop ROI for these things. And, you know, but there is some significant advantages to the automation piece, the robotics. You know, you're never going to completely replace humans in a manufacturing. I say that, but
Right.
yeah. But you know, there are some things, and so the industry I'm in now, there is automation, but there's not what it could be, and so that's what I'm very interested in now, to making those kind of changes and investments to make things better.
Do you think in a decade we will be more? There will be more robots inside of a warehouse environment?
Yeah, but I think it'll come full circle where there's
so?
going to have to be a reckoning balance, if you will, of how much automation you do. You know, I've been in companies where we've had fully automated warehouses where the lights are off, but you know, you still have the same amount of people. Those people are just mechanics because they're just fixing stuff. So, you know, I mean, you know, what's the benefit if you're so? So there's a balance. And it has to do a lot with the investment and capital that it takes to do some of the things. So there are some, you know, you just got to be wise about it and pick your battles with what you want to do.
Is Terminator in our future?
Interesting question. I told you my thoughts earlier.
Yes,
so.
you did. You did. So the answer is maybe.
Skynet, here we come. But we'll see what happens.
Yes.
And that's, again, in my role, my positions, it's all about protect the house. There's always going to be bad actors out there and things, and what you don't want to do is shoot yourself in the foot or use these new tools and technologies to hurt yourself. Just do things that make sense and make things better.
So we're nearing the end of the show. So let's wrap it all on a pretty bow. So first, we've talked a lot about alignment and how to align the technology. I'm a sports guy. We're the technology coach, so we think a lot about sports analogies. You've talked about defense. How do you strike a balance between defense and offense? Right? You need to defend the house, but you also need to take some risks and be strategic. How do you strike that balance?
Depends on the situation, but again, it's the buy-in of the team and the resources you have to work with, resources being money and capital and things of that nature. So you have to be very smart. And striking the balance, you know, do you replace old laptops or do you go buy a new firewall? You know, you have to make strategic decisions that will protect you as long as you can be protected. And so I think you have to be proactive on a lot of things, but some things you're going to have to react to, and there's a lot of nuances to that statement. But I think just being smart with the investments, you know, do you go do mobile device management or do you just get rid of cell phones? You know, there's a bunch of strategic decisions and being proactive that you can do to protect the house. And I think that's where your head needs to be at with being proactive. But again, getting the executive team and any company to buy in to what you're trying to do and to help and enable the business and to help it grow, the more support that you get from the leaders on that, the better off you're going to be to make those decisions.
I love it. Well, what's one last thing, if somebody's listening, that you want to share to make sure that they take away as final thought from Eric Chin?
IT is cool.
IT is cool. There you go. You've heard it from Eric Chin. IT is cool. Well, for all those listening, I appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you. If you need to talk more about any of these things or you want to discuss how to get a technology coach, you can find us at pcatechsolutions.com.